Good morning everyone. It has been so wet lately here on the east coast of Australia. Luckily, we're not as bad as some areas where we used to live in Brisbane. The whole surrounding area is flooded. The house is fine, but yeah, there is just so much water everywhere. And my thoughts are with everyone who is struggling right now with all of those floods and the damage that water can do to your house, to your garden. We have had a lot of rain here. We're getting kind of at least 40 mils a day, sometimes more. The garden I have not touched in a while. It's been a little bit sad not to be able to go out in the garden and plant things, but it's just too wet. We actually don't have any outside cover as well. So filming videos is really challenging when it's raining all day. And we've also had a few areas in the house that have had water in it. Just trying to manage old houses is challenging when it rains a lot, but I'm outside today. It may be a bit of a choppy video if I have to go inside. There's very dark clouds back behind there that are coming my way, but I wanted to do just an intro for the video. Today I'm going to be talking about everything that you can sow in the month of March. I have done some videos like this before, so I'll link them down below if you're in the subtropics. It's a little different here, just some of the varieties of things that I'm going to be growing, but generally it's pretty similar for a lot of Australia, so this will kind of give you a broad overview of things you can start to sow now. I'm going to be sowing a lot of my autumn and winter veggies, which I have never really done before. I've never grown some of these things as it was just too hot where we lived in the subtropics. So I'm very excited, and next week we're going to be getting a large delivery of compost, so I will be able to finish all of the garden beds that I have started. I've kind of just been going as I can with everything behind me before I could kind of find a really good source for compost. So I need to get all of my veggies started now in preparation for planting them out in our market style garden down the back, and also to just fill in little spaces around my zone 1 permaculture patch. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to go on a little walk down at the back and we're going to chat about whether we're getting animals or not, and cover a few other questions that I was asked over on Instagram. So make sure you grab a cup of tea or coffee, and I hope you enjoy today's video. So I usually like to pre-moisten my soil before I fill my seed raising trays, and what this does, it just allows the soil to settle better in the seed raising tray. If you add a dry medium in, when you water it, it's going to sink down. This fills up all of the different pores and expands the mixture so that it is nice and moist. It also means I really don't have to heavily water the seed raising mix when I have the seeds in them, particularly if seeds are really small. They can kind of become dislodged, and I want to keep them as settled as I can when I put them into the seed raising tray. So what you want to look for when you wet your medium that you're growing your seeds in is something that holds its shape but doesn't drip water. So this is kind of what I'm after here. I can hold it together like that, but if I really heavily squeeze it, there's not a lot of moisture that comes dripping out of it. So I'm going to fill the tray with this, and then we can get planting our seeds. Right, so I have my seed raising tray all filled up here. It's a little hard to get it in the frame right now, but I ended up investing in some of these. I bought them from a nursery supplier online, and I can link them in the description box below. I was basically just really sick of flimsy little plastic punnet packets that would just disintegrate over time, which were fine to use when that's all that I had. But I was just buying so many punnets of seedlings that were grown already because I didn't really have the proper materials to be able to grow things from seed. So I ended up investing in some of these. These are really heavy duty plastic, although plastic is not my favorite thing in the world, they're going to last for a long time and be able to start so many more seeds. So I bought just 2 of these, and they're 90 cell trays. They kind of have a tapered bottom, so it's going to be interesting to see how the plants actually come out of these. I'm going to have to rely on a stronger root system to just be able to pull a lot of these out. But how I'm going to be growing this is just having one plant in each cell so that it has the whole cell to itself, and then I can just plant it straight into the ground when it's ready. I'm hoping that I won't have to propagate a lot of these and that they can just go straight out into the garden. So now I've got that out of the way, I'll chat through a few things that I am going to be planting. I have already planted a full tray out of seeds, but these ones that I have selected here are kind of a little bit more of the autumn and winter vegetables. There's 18 rows in here width-wise, so 1, 2, and there's 5 cells in each of those rows. So for plants that I want a little bit more of, I'll do 2 rows. Plants that I only really need 1 or 2 or 3, I'll just do 1 row. So what I'm planting today, I'm going to be planting some golden acre cabbage. These are from Happy Valley Seeds, and I have never grown cabbage before, so I'm going to do 2 rows of those, I think. It's also a good time to start to get your sweet peas in the ground, but I like to plant these directly into the ground, so I need to get my structure up and going behind me. So I'm going to be planting these maybe in the next few weeks, but these are a multiflora colorama mix from Seed Collection. So I'll be planting those sometime later. I'm also going to be sowing some onions. These I'm actually not going to sow in this cell though. I'm going to sow them in a round, smaller little pot. That's just how I like to start my onions. I find that I can just sow the whole pot with onions and then separate them all before they go out into the garden. But I'm going to be growing extra early cream gold onion, as well as some red burgundy, I think. Yeah, as well as some red burgundy. So I'll kind of have yellow and red. Other things we can start to sow in terms of flowers, my 2 favorites, or one of my 2 favorites of winter flowers, are the giant column stalk and snapdragon. So I'm going to be starting some of those, as well as alyssum, trusty favorite, calendula. I really like this mix, the Art Shades mix. It's what I grew at the other place, and I'm going to be growing it again. I'm actually going to be using the seeds that I saved myself though, but this was the picture and the packet that I grew all of those plants from. It's a good time to sow chamomile if it doesn't self-seed in your garden. I've never grown it, it's not growing here, so I need to start some of my own. I'm going to try growing chrysanthemum. I'm not sure if they're going to grow okay or whether it's still too warm, but I'm going to try growing a rainbow mix of those. And then I have a few interesting varieties of some native Australian plants that I'm going to be sowing the seeds for. I picked up these packets when I was in Tasmania a few years ago, and I'm not too sure how viable they're going to be, but I'm going to see how I go anyway. They just prefer a little bit cooler temperatures. So I'm going to start with some native indigo. This one here. So this is a shrub, grows to about 1.5 meters, as it says, with those gorgeous purple flowers. These ones actually require heat to break their dormancy and kind of trigger the start of germination. So they say that you need to place these in a container and cover with boiling water to soak for 24 hours. So I'll definitely be doing that before I plant them. Definitely make sure to read the seed packet when you're planting your flowers in particular. A lot of those seeds need different actions to make them start to germinate, like stratification, where you might need to put them in the freezer, or you might need to rub the seeds with some sandpaper, or heat. So definitely make sure to check what the seeds need. I'm also going to be planting some snowberry. These are really pretty little shrubs, and I really like the foliage on this plant too. And swamp paperbark. I have a really boggy area of the garden. I'll take you down in a little bit, down the very back, and I think these will be really nice down there. Paperbarks and melaleucas really like wet soils, or they can handle wet soils, so they will do well down there. In terms of veggies, it is a good time to start all of your brassicas. So that means broccoli, cabbage, like I showed you, pak choi, cauliflower. I'm going to be growing some Italian sprouting broccoli, as well as some purple sprouting. I'm growing snowball early cauliflower, some good old pak choy, collards, tatsoi. Another one I'm really excited for, kohlrabi. I'm growing the purple Vienna variety, and I'm also going to give celery a go. I've got the tall Utah variety. So I'm going to see what else I can fit into this seed raising tray. Other things that are great to plant right now are things like kale, your winter greens, so silver beet, lettuce, particularly if you're in the subtropics. All of these greens will grow really well right now. The only things that you might want to steer away from, unless you're living more in the tropical areas, are things like corn to sow, watermelon, pumpkins and zucchini, cucumber. Those things will be coming to their end of their life right now in summer and will probably be a little bit too cool in the next coming months to be able to sow the seeds and get another harvest. Unless you have the microclimate to do so, then by all means, sow whatever you can grow. So I'm just trying to have a look around what else I have growing. I have some zinnias, some basil, everlasting daisies. I've tried to sow some lavender seeds. I'm not sure if they'll germinate or not. I've sown some pansies and Chinese broccoli as well. So I have lots going on in my seed raising area, getting ready for when we get our load of compost and I can plant out the entire garden. And so what I've done for all of these varieties that I'm going to be sowing, I have just created little seed labels. Make sure you label things before you put the seeds in, so you know what you actually have in there, because there has been so many times when I have just, I thought I will remember exactly what I've planted and then I end up going a little bit overboard and I forget everything that grows until it ends up popping up. So I just use like old Tetra Packs from like soy milk, and I just use a permanent marker, and I find that they really last a long time and you can give things another use rather than going straight to recycling, which ends up using a lot more energy. Right, I am going to get planting and then maybe do a little bit of a garden walk to wrap up this video. I'm actually going to put 2 in each hole just to make sure that I do get some germination, particularly for the plants where I'm only planting one row. Alright, my tray of seeds is now finished. That one is going to go and live next to the other one on the worm farm bins during the day just to get some light, and then I do take them in at night. So I thought I would answer a few questions. I did kind of an Instagram question thing a few weeks ago, and a few people asked a few questions just generally about the property and growing different things. And speaking of seeds, Lisa asks, how do you source the best heirloom seed suppliers for a particular climate? So a lot of the seeds that I have are from larger websites like the Seed Collection, Happy Valley Seeds. In terms of heirloom varieties, a lot of those actually are heirloom, and I have never had a problem with them growing in the subtropics. Hopefully I don't have a problem here. A lot of them are grown and cultivated all around Australia. They'll say the seed company is based in usually Victoria. A lot of these larger ones are based and they source seeds from all over Australia, doing testing in every area as well. So you'll have pretty good luck with a lot of these larger companies because they do really vigorous testing around in all different states. But in terms of wanting to source local heirloom varieties, I would just suggest doing lots of research and looking on Facebook and finding kind of like food swap groups or plant swap groups, nurseries. Doing research and networking with local people around is your best bet at finding some heirloom seeds that are grown and specified to your area. There are quite a few people I know in Brisbane who have seed swap groups, and around Australia I'm sure there are a lot of different resources. So I would just suggest doing a lot of research and networking, asking your local nursery if they know anyone who supplies seeds. Usually they will be more than happy to chat about where to get seeds that are specific to your area. Another question was from Leilani, who asked, is tomato season over? And it depends on where you live. In Brisbane, no, it's the start. I like to grow the larger variety of tomatoes in Brisbane over the winter. They do so much better because you don't have fruit fly. Down south coast New South Wales, I think it might be a little bit too cold to start tomatoes unless you have a greenhouse and you can grow them inside. Other varieties, there are some kind of patio varieties that you can grow inside your house. But usually summer in a lot of southern areas of Australia is the main time to grow tomatoes. Another question was from Jeff at Whitbird Environmental, who potentially asked me the hardest question I could ever answer, and that is, what's your favourite Australian native plant? My dilemma is I have probably dozens of favourite Australian plants depending on where I like to plant them in the garden. I think I've kind of narrowed it down to a variety, I suppose. One of my favourite kind of varieties of plants are Syzygium or lily pillies. I love the foliage of them and I love the fruit as well, particularly some of the larger fruit and the larger trees in northern Australia. Some of them, like the lady apple, are some of the most gorgeous trees and produce so much food. There is so much bush food in Australia that Indigenous people have eaten and grown and planted for tens of thousands of years, and I'm always fascinated by that. And the Syzygium species has fed so many people over Australia for so long, so that's probably one of them. Currently though, I am loving leptospermums. The flowers on those are just absolutely gorgeous, and I really want to plant a lot more around in the garden because I love the shape of the flowers and the cool pastel colours. So I told you I couldn't just answer with one. My other one that I have to mention is Antarctic beech trees. Something that I'm never going to be able to grow myself, but I was always in love going to visit. There's 3 large trees that are over 2,000 years old in the Border Ranges and Lamington National Park, just south of Brisbane. And the story about those trees is just magical and wonderful, that they grew over 180 million years ago, before Gondwana broke apart. So yeah, they're also a photo that I use a lot and will use a lot on my website, which is almost coming out, and is one of my favourite photos of those 3 trees that I'll put over on the screen now. I just love that species and the story behind it, really. It's very magical and just blows my mind every time I go and visit those trees. And then the very last question that I will answer that quite a few people have been asking is, are we getting animals? Are we getting chickens? Are we getting goats? Are we getting animals in the garden? And I have my gumboots on right now for a good reason, because it's been raining obviously quite a lot lately, and one thing that I really need to do, and that I would recommend everyone does, is survey your land and get to know your land when it rains really heavily. And the reason for that is because this area down here, down the back that I walked to with the pear tree, is very boggy, and I need to be able to see what happens when all of this rain comes and how boggy the area gets, because I would absolutely love to get chickens in this area. I think this is a perfect area that we can enclose behind us with these larger trees, even under the pear tree here, to be able to have a very large chicken run, but I have just needed to monitor the area for a while. I've put a lot of my focus on the garden, and I have been learning about what happens to this property with different seasonal changes, which is important because if we put a chicken coop down here and it kind of gets really boggy and kind of floods, that's not really what I want with a chicken coop. So to answer that question, yes, we are looking at getting chickens, probably not within the next few months, maybe within the next 6 months. I want to build a good structure and learn how to keep chickens. I was also looking into getting some rabbits for fertilizer to help produce fertilizer for the garden. Scott's not too keen on rabbits, and I'm not too sure one of our cats is going to be too keen. So I'm putting that idea to the side for now and focusing on chickens, potentially maybe quail if I can convince Scott if we can build another enclosure that is a little bit more protected. In the future I would love goats, but I don't think our property is large enough, and yeah, I need a lot more learning to do before we get goats. So for now, we've just got the 2 cats and maybe chickens in the future. So I'm going to leave the video here. Annie has come to join us. She's out on her morning walk because she didn't get one yesterday because it was very rainy. I hope you enjoyed today's video, learned a little bit about what you can grow and sow right now, and a little bit about our future plans for this property. So I hope you're all having a lovely day wherever you are in the world, and until my next video, happy gardening everyone. Bye!